All right, Lions fans, let's talk post first round draft pick, um, Mr. Sewell or Sewell. I still haven't got that. Let me just say this out the gate for everybody who said Halapalooty Vitae was a bad signing. If the Lions don't make the mistake of cutting him, I understand they made, excuse me, they made the announcement they're going to move him from tackle to guard. That should have been indication what they're going to go to in the draft, right? They always tip their hands, and so they did it again. Fortunately, the guy who I was clamoring for fell to him. But anyway, with that being said, Halapalooty Vitae at guard next to Ragnow, right? He's not next to Dominic Raiola or anybody before Dominic Raiola or after Peterman or whoever you want to get put at the center spot. All right. Who was at the center spot before Ragnow got there? Was it uh, I know it wasn't Robinson, not Ashawn Robinson. Glasgow. Was it Glasgow? Glasgow? Was it him? I don't know. Whoever was at that center spot, it's clearly well. If you have Halapalooty Vitae next to whoever that was, that Ragnar replaced him at center. If you Halapalooty Vitae is a complete bust. Who was at right tackle when? Well, Halapalooty Vitae was actually supposed to be at right tackle, I believe, but he got moved inside because somebody who got hurt. Well, he got hurt rather, and they switched around. Jonah Jackson ended up going to from left guard to right guard, and Matt Nelson coming in, and Crosby came in, and all right, there's nothing solidified there. So you got nothing to play off. Only stud that you had going for you was Ragnow, and off that Ragnow, Decker stepped up. Not saying Decker stepped up because Ragnow was there. I'm saying it was the perfect time for him to play his A game. All right, but as going back to my point, nobody Halapalooty Vitae for everybody who said that he was a bad signing. Right, they moved him from tackle to guard. Now, when they brought in when they well, forgive me, when they drafted Penny Sewell, and they're gonna move him to right guard. I mean, forgive me, right tackle. He between Ragnow and Halapalooty Vitae. No, forgive me. Halapalooty Vitae between Ragnow and Sewell. Absolute knockout. I said last year that right side was going to be a stud because they was going to put Jonah Jackson at the right, but he ended up going to the left because of all the injuries and switcheroos and all that good stuff. So he's going to go from left to right, from my understanding. If not, if he goes to from left to right, if Jonah Jackson, if he goes from left to right, Sewell still is a dog because well, forgive me, Halapalooty Vitae is still going to be a beast because he's in between Taylor Decker and Ragnow. He's a beast. Any which way go, you put Halapalooty Vitae at either left guard or right guard, based upon how you want to do Jonah Jackson, based upon how you want to do Sewell. You want to put him at right tackle or you want to put him at left tackle. They have so much versatility right now. The only player that I would have saw them drafting as a good consolation prize for not drafting Sewell would have been Pitts. Why? Because he's a matchup nightmare. Well, by the Lions not having receivers, right? No Kenny Galladay, no Marvin Jones, no anybody, right? However, if you don't know how you're going to play Pitts, you know how you're going to play Hawkinson, right? Based off of film last year. The offensive line is going to be okay. I'm saying if they did. I'm saying if they would If Sewell didn't fall to them, and they were stuck at 7, and nobody wanted to trade with them, Pitts would have been the pick more so than any receiver. Why? Because you get 2 for 1. You get a receiver and a tight end. So what I mean by that is TJ Hockenson is like a receiver blocker, but Pitts is like a tight end, like a receiver tight end and a receiver wide receiver type deal. So he's like 2 for 1. What you can do with him when you have to focus so much on Hockenson and forgive me, and you have to focus so much on Hockenson and Swift or Jamal Williams in the backfield. You got to focus so much on that, right? Pitts is a nightmare, a matchup nightmare. So he would have been. The Lions did. They did a switcheroo with, and how I failed is a switcheroo from the draft year when they drafted Hockenson. That year they drafted Hockenson, I wanted them to draft Josh Allen, so they got the consolation prize. This year they actually got the guy that I wanted to get instead of getting the consolation prize. So, but at the same time, the pick that they got this year solidifies, not just it cemented the offensive line, but it it's so much you can do on defense based upon your offensive line. What does the offensive line have to do with your defense? Rest. Okay, I'm gonna make a little spill about Matt Patricia's system. Of course, people may say he was a bad pick and he was a bad coach, and I get that. He had his own self in the way. All right, but the only thing about that is by him not having himself together as preparation to be a head coach, and or not just a head coach, but a head coach here in Detroit is very particular. Is very unique, right? So nobody, by him not really knowing much about coaching himself, I mean, no experience pretty much. So that's one thing, but going to a place that is so disorganized, you have to know what you know. You have to know your stuff. You really do. And one thing you have to know is how to put your players in position to succeed. He wanted players that don't need to be taught or need to be told what to do. They just know what to do. Those are his type of guys because he's not the type of coach that know how to put a player in the right position, right? Okay, but anyway, with that being said, how they did it, the players that they drafted, the players that Bob Quinn brought in here will be great for a head coach who knows how to utilize or not to put players in their position. So immediately when this regime came in, first thing they did, one of the first thing they did, they said, all right, Halapoulivaati Vitae is going to go from right tackle to guard, regardless if he's going to play left or right. So that opens the door for two of my favorites, Penei Sewell, or Sewell, Penei Sewell, or Rashawn Slater, right? And if those two was off the board, quarterback, wide receiver was not an option. The reason why wide receiver was never an option for me, because a wide receiver can't do anything for this organization. Calvin Johnson is the matter of fact. Calvin Johnson can do everything for this. Or Calvin Johnson could do everything what Barry Sanders can do for this organization. Why? Because his I don't want to say his athleticism, but his capabilities don't just put him at receiver, even though he's going to play predominantly the receiver. He's going to play inside, outside, so forth. He can do all different things. But his size makes the defensive coordinator strategize the game plan on Calvin Johnson a little differently than you would a Marvin Jones or a Kenny Golladay. Calvin Johnson's stature, his what he can bring to the table, that he can jump high, run fast, he can go inside, go outside. He can take off. He can take it off the top. He can get double team. I mean, he could bust through coverage. He could block. Calvin Johnson was a matchup nightmare. Matchup nightmare. So he basically taking half of the field. Secondary. I mean, you're talking about when the quarterback secondary, you got somebody covered over doing a cover two and so forth. Because Calvin Johnson was a nightmare, right? I'm looking at there's no receiver that give me that kind of a threat. So I would scratch every receiver off the board. No receiver. The consolation prize to solidify an offensive line is Pitts. Why? Because he's a matchup nightmare. As a defensive coordinator, if you're going to be concerned about Hockenson, not Goff, but Hockenson, they're going to make each other better. Goff is going to make Hockenson better. Hockenson is going to make Goff better. Goff going to, in return, continue the growth for Hockenson, right? They're going to make each other better. So what you going to do about Hockenson, right? What are you going to do about Hockenson? Never mind. It don't matter what receiver you have. What are you going to do about Hockenson? He's a problem, right? In his second year? He's a problem. His heart to get better, he's Frank Ragnow-esque. You know what I mean? He's a problem. So you put Pitts next to that. You don't need, and even though they got, I think his name is Tyrell Williams, I think the receiver, he's a speedster, I believe. Even that, he's like, for a defensive coordinator, a third or fourth option, right? If that. But if you don't get Sewell, you get Pitts. Anybody talking about they should have got a receiver, they got a linebacker, they shouldn't get out of anything. If one thing about the best thing that happened about building this offensive line, excuse me, or completing the offensive line, they said that way. And once again, Bob Quinn did an excellent job. Now, if the people say, well, no, Brad Holmes made the pick for Sewell. No. Only thing Brad Holmes did was not make the mistake of not completing the deal. Everything that they're doing is what Bob Quinn put them in position to do. The whole Stafford thing, that had nothing to do with Bob Quinn or had anything with the organization. That's all Stafford. And it turned out to be a mutual consent that they both wanted, whatever. And people say, well, Brad Holmes got 2 firsts. They didn't get 2 firsts out of that. And it wasn't like that because you could have traded Stafford last year to Miami for 2 first-round picks and I think in a second. So he's not getting that much of a deal, that much of a difference of a deal. But anyway, the one thing I will give Brad Holmes credit is that he's following the template. Bob Quinn gave them a template. All you have to do is just connect the dots or add a few more pieces. Add a few more pieces. People say like Okuda's a bad pick. Okuda's not a bad pick. He just mispositioned. Same thing as Jared Davis. He's misfit. It's almost equivalent to when the Lions drafted Kyle Van Noy. Who was the coach here? And I believe they was running a 4-3. I don't know if it was Schwartz or was it Schwartz? I know it wasn't Cardwell. It could have been Schwartz. And if they was running a 3-4, he's out of place. They get the talent, but they put him out of place. Brad Holmes, what he did was he just finished the template. So with Jeff Okudah, he put me in the mind of Jeff Okudah's situation put me in mind of one of my favorite free safeties that got switched over from cornerback was Merton Hanks for the 49ers, right? So if they were to go that route and have him and Walker in the backfield, right? They have another corner. Corners are good let's say, for example, was Deion Sanders good in Atlanta as a corner? I know he had his battles against Michael Irvin, Choo Choo Baby, which is Sterling Sharp, and of course Jerry Rice and Andre. No, he was with Andre Rison. Who else? I don't want to call it Anthony Miller when he was with San Diego. I think Willie Davis when he was with Kansas City, the Chiefs, and maybe I want to say Urban Fryer, maybe when he was with the Browns. It was a few receivers. It wasn't really passing oriented. It was really more so running oriented, running back. It was running game oriented in those days. Yeah, he had a few quarterbacks that slung it around. But Deion Sanders, I wouldn't consider Deion Sanders as elite as he is elite because he didn't shut down Jerry Rice. He didn't shut down Sterling Sharp, and he didn't shut down Michael Irvin. He didn't shut them down. So he shut down the B and C receivers. He may got a couple plays against those top three, but he didn't shut them down. Chris Carter, I guess you could throw in there too, and Chris Carter came in a little later, but the top three was Jerry, Michael, and Sterling Sharp. Deion Sanders was shutting them down. So what my point of what I'm saying is that they had to get Deion some help, but Atlanta never got him any help. But what happened was, of course, Choo Choo Baby got hurt. Jerry Rice is Jerry Rice. So they battled. Michael Irvin is Michael Irvin. Michael Irvin ended up having Alvin Harper on the opposite side of him. Jerry Rice had John Taylor. And, of course, you got the tight ends of Jay Novacek for Michael Irvin, and you got Brent Jones for 49ers. What I'm saying is, like, that took Deion Sanders out the game because you got different options to go to, right? However, with Deion Sanders eliminated everybody else because there wasn't really those top receivers. So what I'm saying by that is that as much people say Deion Sanders was a Pro Bowl-esque, I mean, like all pro shut down, I don't see it. I don't see him as a shut down guy because he didn't shut down the top three. He may worked, he battled, but he didn't shut them down. So when people say like, well, Okudah supposed to came in as a Deion Sanders, you give Okudah some help. That's what you do. You build up that defensive line, right? You can do that now because your offensive line is solidified for the next 5 years. They just picked up Ragnow's option, so I believe they're going to sign him, particularly after this year. And if this offensive line starts to jail early, I give this current regime preseason game. Give me two preseason games, and that will let me know if this offensive line is going to be any good. 2 preseason games. I'm not talking about them to be. They're not going to show anything per se. They're going to be very vanilla. But I'm looking for continuity. I'm looking for there's a unit to be solidified as a unit. If that offensive line gets solidified, that makes the whole team better. Why? Because that puts the defense in its proper position. The one thing Matt Patricia had going against him was that he didn't know as much. He didn't have much experience as much as he had book smart, right? He can probably grasp things very quickly. Don't get me wrong. His intellect probably was high off the chart. But at the same time, he didn't have much experience like the intimate details. He didn't have that. So he is going to mess him up. So if his offensive line is spotty, right, like which happened with injuries and everything else, as a head coach, what is he going to do? He don't know how to put people in position, right? So if you don't know how to put people in position to succeed, if your offensive line is going down and you got to switch them around, that takes him away from actually showing what he actually can do on the defensive side of the ball. Even though he got an offensive coordinator that can help him out on the offensive side of the ball, but he's the head coach that he's supposed to be the overseer. If the offensive coordinator knows how to get up to the ceiling, the head coach has the experience or whatever capacity that it is to get them past the ceiling. And Matt Patricia didn't have that. He was a pup. You know, he knew a lot, but he didn't know experience, right? He was around experience, but he didn't know experience. His what he knew didn't get tested till he came to Detroit. Bill Belichick was well tested before he got to New England. Well tested. So with that being said, Matt Patricia, one fault was that he didn't know enough, but he knew enough. IQ, stuff like that, he knew enough. Experience, he didn't know enough. So when everything falls down and you got to go by experience, he had nothing to go with. So Okudah is going to fail and he's going to look like a bust, but he's not a bust. If the offensive line is better, right? Instead of the offensive line is going to be a top 5 offensive line. Let's give that a hypothetical. The offensive line is a top 5, right? Offensive line. That defensive line, even with the players that they have, even with the linebackers that they have, that makes them better. Because now the head coach, the coordinator, well, particularly the head coach, can put a lot of focus on something that's not solidified. And now he can use his brain trust, and focus on what he needs to do, how he needs to do it, angle, not just for this current year, but let's say the general manager. The general manager can have a really a futuristic type view as well as the present based upon what the head coach is able to focus on with the defense side of the ball only. He don't have to focus on offense. If it's done correctly, right? The offensive side of the ball going to take care of itself, which has always been the case. But the only difference between now and how it was, to say, with Barry Sanders and Calvin Johnson is that the offensive line was never a beast. Calvin Johnson had what? Rob Sims, Backus, he had Raiola. And I think he had a little bit of, I don't know if he had Taylor Decker, I'm not sure, but he had that was pretty much his offensive line. Come on, man, you can't do no with that. You can't do it. Your best player is Calvin Johnson. You're gonna take him out the game because they got no running game. Now let's go back to Barry Sanders. Barry Sanders had Lomas Brown, Kevin Glover, Utley before, what happened to him, and then there's another guy before his injury. Those two, whatever. But your 2 Pro Bowlers was Glover and Lomas Brown. Where's the rest of the Hogs? Right? They stopped. So they banked everything on Barry. Same thing what they did with Calvin. You have Backus and Raiola as your best 2 offensive linemen. But they can't get any push. They can't get any dominance, right? Now, fast forward to now, you have Ragnow as your best offensive lineman. Taylor Decker is not a slouch. Ragnow is your best offensive lineman, and he's a beast. So he makes the offensive line better by himself. By himself. He makes his left and right guard better. So if you have the best tackle in the draft come to you, right? And he's just an instant stud. So like he kicks in the door, such as how you make your little your rookie mistakes. I don't think you'll have to make that many rookie mistakes, because what he will have, and that's what I'm saying about the first 2 games in the preseason, would develop a continuity between Ragnow is going to be, I believe if it was up to me, he would be the voice of the room, right? Of the offense side of the ball. He'd be the voice of the room. And everybody will follow his lead. Starting with that offensive line. Now, by that offensive line being so coming together as a unit, it inspires, or it actually it becomes contagious for other sections or other core or units to become together as one, right? But what it does for the general manager and the head coach, it takes a lot of pressure off of you. By finishing off the deal with the offensive lineman, with offensive line, forgive me, it takes off so much pressure to do everything else. The coach can focus on the defense side of the ball a lot more. And I'm trying to say he's still going to be a head coach. He got to oversee every aspect of it, offense, defense, special team. He got to oversee everything, but he don't have to oversee a group that can solidify the team. It's like having a dominant defense. If you got a dominant defense, I'm not talking about a good defense or okay defense. I'm talking about a dominant defense. All you have to do is complement that. The best complement to a dominant defense, of course, we would say a run game. Why? Because it runs the clock. And running the clock it gives your defense, which is your best asset, a lot of time to breathe. So in other words, you're valuing them. That's what the offensive line is going to do to everything else. It will allow you to have a dominant defense. All the pieces will come into place. Okay, you have in your secondary, in your defense, you have Trey Flowers, Brockers, and Penei Sewell is in my head now, but the gentleman that tackle, wow, Bob Quinn drafted him in the 6th round, I believe. I can't think of his name, but if you know who I'm talking about, then you know what I'm saying. Those three, Jamie Collins is going to be a roamer. You can roam him around. And they said they don't have no linebackers. And then you have Okudah, you have Amari Oruwariye, and you may have Tracy Walker, right? So that's all you have to go with your defense. You know what you have by your offensive side of the ball is the offensive side of the ball is done. You got your 2 running backs, or possibly 3 running backs, right? So, and you got your quarterback. The quarterback doesn't have to do anything now. You have your tight end, and you may arguably get another tight end, which I hope they get the guy from, I think it's from Penn State. They call him Baby Gronk. I hope they get him. But, yeah, you don't have to. You could just really run the ball until they stop you. You know that makes the offensive line that much like eager to want to play when they're dominating. You go back to any offensive line that is like they just dominate. It by them being able to dominate the other opposing defensive line, it's beautiful to see, but at the same time, the players get inspired. It's like a adrenaline rush. It's like whatever. It just get amped up to another level. But what I'm saying is the offensive line is going to solidify the defense. The offensive line. I said that time and time again. Of course, this is going back to the Matt Patricia thing. I said, don't fire Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia. Give them one more off season. Because what the Lions is doing now is what Bob Quinn wanted to do the year before. He wanted to trade Matthew Stafford, but they didn't want to let him go. So when Matthew Stafford said, I want out, now they said, okay, we can let him go. The Lions is like a day late, dollar short. But anyway, can you imagine if they had those 2 first-round picks? Let's say, for example, with Miami, they had those 2 first-round picks, and they traded Stafford. Okay, you could have got your quarterback. Now you got your quarterback. Okay. And you didn't have to draft Okudah. Then you could have drafted maybe Derek Brown. You could have drafted anybody, right? Or then you come into to that draft, you could have got you a tackle if you wanted to, right? You didn't have to get Derek. You had 2 first-rounders. So, no, you would have 3, actually. You had 3 first-rounders because they was going to give you 2 first-rounders and possibly later round picks. So you'd had your pick and 2 first rounds. So you had 3 first-round picks. So you could have got your quarterback in the future, or not. You could have got your left tackle, and you could have got your defensive player. What I'm saying is that Brad, I'm not gonna give Brad Holmes like a lot of things. Only thing that I would give him credit for what he did is just he just didn't fumble. Well, he just is already there. Just fill in the blanks. Everything is already there. Just fill in the blanks. You need a safety, fill in that blank. You need maybe two linebackers, fill in that blank. The offensive side of the ball is done. People say we need receivers. You don't need receivers. Get you another tight end, right? To get you another tight end, maybe a blocking receiving tight end. If they already have that on their team, then so be it. All right, well then the offensive side of the ball is already done. Receivers, Cephas can eat. Anybody they bring in can eat. You got you Tyrell Williams, he can throw the roof off, right? But your main concern on offense is two. Well, actually three. It's three things that you need to be concerned about the Lions offense as a defensive coordinator. You got to be concerned about Hockenson. You got to be concerned about a two-headed, but maybe possibly a three-headed monster in Swift, Jamal Williams, and Kerryon Johnson, and maybe, and the third is that offensive line. And I'm not going to applaud Brad Holmes for doing anything by trading Stafford, getting those 2 first-round picks and got Goff. No, that was a consolation prize for not doing the deal, for not allowing Bob Quinn to do that deal with Miami. That's the consolation prize. So I don't give this current regime any credit. The only thing this current regime, only thing they have to do is don't mess up everything. Bob Quinn put this team in an excellent position to succeed. And I didn't post my last video, which I said I was going to do, but I didn't do. And I'm going to add some things from that last video to this video. A great GM, a good to great GM does one thing. They have to do this one thing. They have to be in 3 places at once. They got to be in the past, the present, and the future. They got to have 3 hats. They got to close out the past. They got to position themselves for the future, but be in the present. They have to be able to see what's going on right there. If they can do some minor tweaking to whatever the positioning for the next year, or to remove something of the past, or make something that's currently on the roster of the past and get rid of it. That general manager had to be in 3 places at once. So Bob Quinn was, in my opinion, the best general manager the Lions had because he was in 3 places at once. Somebody would say, well, look at all the signings that he did. They didn't work out. They didn't work out because they were bad picks. They worked out because the coach didn't know how to position them. The coach was over his head. Now, I'm not blaming Matt Patricia for being Matt Patricia. Whoever brought him in here, I'm faulting that. So that's why I believe Bob Quinn had to get fired. And I don't think he had to get fired. I think it was a mutual deal for him to be let go. Not because he brought in Matt Patricia, he could replace him with somebody who had experience, like Josh McDaniel. He had experience, and it was the New England way over here, so he came right on in. But I think he went on and said, like, well, I brought him in here, and I think it's better be a good deal. And he said, all right, go ahead and say that you fired me. I think they handled it. The owner and Bob Quinn handled that situation very professionally, and they allowed him to take the hit. But Matt Patricia was just above his head. He had intellect, he had IQ, he just didn't have experience. And that's where I don't know if Dan Quinn is that guy. Dan Campbell. I said Dan Quill. Dan Campbell. I don't know if he's that guy that has the IQ, but he has the experience as a head coach. Even if it's an interim basis, he does. But one thing that will help him out, like you would a rookie quarterback or a first-year quarterback or a rookie head coach, the one thing that can help you out, if that offensive line gels, you got 2 guys to lean on. You got Ragnow for number 1. You got Taylor Decker for number 2. Halapoulivaati Vaitai is going to be a professional. I called him when they signed him. I said he's an experienced rookie. because of the little snaps that he had, the little snaps that he had in Philadelphia and so forth. He was like an inexperienced. He was like he was like an experienced rookie per se, even though he had experience in the Super Bowl and all that. So he's going to fit in well. Jonah Jackson came in very mature and ready. But the best thing is about this offensive line, you got two guys in Ragnow and Taylor Decker that is going to actually make the learning curve, if there is one, for Jonah Jackson and Sewell to plug in and solidify the offensive line. I guarantee you this, once that offensive line is solidified, Okudah looks better. Let's see, who else? They was claiming to be bust. If they decide to keep Jelani Tavai, he looks better. They said, well, somebody may say, well, that's on the defense side of the ball. If your offense is dominating, right? If your offense is dominating, Matthew Stafford has never had an offensive line like this. Never had an offensive. Matter of fact, Barry Sanders, Calvin Johnson has never had an offensive line like this. Never. Can you imagine? How many of us have said, can you imagine Barry Sanders behind the offensive line of Dallas Cowboys? Can you imagine Calvin Johnson with an offensive line like this, with a tight end TJ? Can you imagine everything that Bob Quinn needed or could have get him over the top to be a contender? Mayhew drafted, and Mayhew drafted, and then those Millen did Calvin Johnson, and that was it. Everything else was a flop. Mayhew got you Matthew Stafford and all the other good stuff, right? But all that with combination with Quinn, this is what makes Brad Holmes like in a great position to succeed, because he can build off of those two. Of course, you don't have Calvin Johnson. You don't have Matthew Stafford per se, and you don't have whatever. But what you do have is something that they built off of them, right? You don't need a Calvin Johnson right now. The Lions showed proof of that last year when they had not last year, but the year before last, when they had Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones. But last year, T.J. Hockenson, when there was no Kenny Golladay, it was T.J. Hockenson. So you don't need a Calvin Johnson. But what I'm saying is that, could you imagine a Calvin Johnson with a T.J. Hockenson in his offensive line? Never mind DeAndre Swift in the backfield. Never mind if Stafford was here or not. It's like he had Goff. Can you imagine Calvin Johnson with that? Can you imagine Barry Sanders with not a David Sloan, but he had a T.J. Hockenson? And even though you got Lomas Brown and Kevin Glover as your Pro Bowlers, can you imagine? Barry Sanders' game is automatically better just by having T.J. Hockenson. Right? It's automatically better. So what I'm saying by that is that team is better because they don't have to solely put all the responsibility on Barry Sanders. When the offensive line is this, if the offensive line could just come in and just dominate, be a top 5 offensive line, I'm going to put my little statement out there. I don't accept them to be anything less than a top 5 offensive line. Not because of the money and all the amount of input that they put into the offensive line. No, they was already good last year. Even with the shuffling of the chairs, it was already good. I expect this offensive line to be a top 5 offensive line. Not because they drafted a high draft offensive lineman. No, the continuity. I expect Ragnow is the reason why I believe this offensive line is going to be a top 5. Ragnow. If he's healthy, man, if long as the offensive line coach or the offensive coordinator or the head coach, long as they're on the same page and they know how to put players in position to succeed. If they see Ragnow already succeeding, Taylor Decker already succeeding, just allow them to do what they do, and you plug in your Halapoulivaati Vitae and your Jonah Jackson and your Sewell. And your offensive side of the ball is taken care of. Now, from this point on, All Brad Holmes got to do is focus on the missing pieces of the defense. Okudah is not a bad pick, right? He's not a bad pick. Jelani Tavai is not a bad pick. They was misplaced. If Okudah's success was based off of Ohio State having a dominant defensive line, right? Well, your offensive lineman is going to make your defensive lineman better, just in practice alone. Just in practice, if the offensive linemen jail and they come in with like this mantra or this focus, like we're gonna be dominant. Never mind, we're gonna be dominant throughout the NFL, and they just approach every practice, every film study that way. We're gonna be dominant. We're gonna be the best offensive lineman, and that makes your it don't matter if you got a little bunch of scrap defensive linemen. Of course, you will be good if you got talent. That automatically makes your defensive line better. Just based upon the practice alone, because you're going against top elite, right? So, but it puts Brad Holmes in a position to be in the present, to have that cap and see who is on his defensive line is actually playing at 100%, playing at top tier talent. You know, that not top tier talent, but playing at that high capacity that I can build with. Brockers, he probably know what he has in him. He don't know what he probably has in Trey Flowers. So Trey Flowers at the end of this year could be getting ready to be moved or whatever the case may be. But at least you would know based off your offensive alignment. Everything is based, the Lions' success is based off the offensive alignment. I've been beating that drum before the draft even took place. What I was suggesting was that with that 7 overall pick, before they even traded Stafford, I was saying, sending that to Indianapolis if you could and try to get Quentin Nelson, because I was kind of like high on keeping Halapoulivaati at right tackle, right? I don't think he was a bad right tackle. I think he was hurt, and he couldn't when he was hurt. Starting off the season, I think he was hurt, so he couldn't play right tackle. So somebody had to take in the right tackle spot. So when he came back, somebody wasn't playing guard, so he took that spot. Then he got hurt again. Then somebody moved from, I think it was Jonah Jackson, moved from left to right, and then he came back healthy. And then now the line was just in a shuffle. So he never had a really flow to show who he is. Nor gave him an opportunity to be put in position correctly because of all the shuffling of the chairs. But with all that been said, that Bob Quinn did a great job, in my opinion. He did of course, a lot of fans are going to say he did opposite. He did a great job because he wore 3 hats. He was in the present. He closed out the mess of Mayhew, and also he was preparing for the future. I am convinced that if they was in the position they was in right now, in the 7th pick, and Quinn was the general manager, they would have went after. They probably been in more position to trade the 7th pick. Maybe let's say this hypothetically, they was at a standstill and they couldn't trade, just like the Lions couldn't, and they was stuck at there. I believe he probably would have took Pitts. And Stafford was his quarterback. They say if everything is set up just the same way that it is now, right? Jamie Collins got his contract restructured. The trade to LA for golf and whatever, you have that, and you got the 2 firsts, right? He would have probably went with Pitts, because I think he would have took a page out of Belichick's book and created a mismatch like problems. Hockenson and Pitts with Swift and Jamal Williams. I'm not saying Bob Quinn would have did exactly what made the exact moves that he did, but I don't think he would have did a lot of things a little bit different. I don't think he did it a little bit differently. And I'm kind of glad that they didn't draft Isaiah Simmons or Becton. And I'm glad that they drafted Okudah, because now you can focus solely on the defense side of the ball. What I mean by that is You can zoom in on everything of every player on the defense, which is the past, with the exception of the players that you brought in this year, which is basically the future. All the players of the past, you can focus on them. You can focus on see if you can build with them. You keep going and whatever, because next year is the year. Next year is the year. You will have a complete team next year. You're gonna find out what you have in Okuda and Mario Warrior. You're gonna find out what you have in Tracy Walker. You're gonna find out if you're gonna keep Jelani Tavai. You're gonna keep with Jamie Collins. If you're gonna keep Trey Flowers, you're gonna find out all these different things. You're gonna find out what you have. Even you're gonna find because oh man, I'm extremely excited. Not to be a Lions fan. I won't be. Well, I won't go through that again. But they are in a if Brad Holmes continue to just connect the dots and just fill in the blanks, go get your safety now. Don't worry about the linebacker core. Don't worry about your defensive line is going to be great, right? With Trey Flowers and Brockers alone, your defensive line is going to be great. I wouldn't even base it upon pressure. Like well, they got to get a lot of pressure. If your defensive alignment is dominant, remember what they're going up against in practice. Let's say if the offensive line is a cohesive unit, they just road raiders. They are maulers, right? And everyone takes their job seriously. It's going to make that defensive line, even if it's addition with subtraction, better. It doesn't matter if you keep the. I'm okay. I'm okay. I don't. I'm not on the Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell train as much as I was the Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia's train. Because I just loved how I just love the standard that they brought here. Now, once again, I would say this: Dan Campbell is the next step version or the next level version of Matt Patricia. He is the experienced guy, and that's personally as well as a professional coach and so forth. He's a step higher than Matt Patricia. Somebody may say he's nothing like Matt Patricia. That's the point that I'm making. He's the experienced version of Matt Patricia. But I say that to say that I love the standard that they brought here. They said 8-8 wasn't good enough, and I'm going to close out with this. No, 9-7 is not good enough. What that statement did, it actually changed the whole franchise. And somebody may say, well, they never reached 9-7 games. They got never the coach that they fired. He got 10 games, 12 games, whatever. But what good is it if you're not in the NFC title game? See, that's the standard. That when he said 9-7 wasn't good enough, he was talking about that everything that represents 9-7 has to go, including Matthew Stafford and everything else. Only thing Brad Holmes did was just finish the deal. But everything of that 9-7 pretty much is gone out the door. From Millen Mayhew, let's say from Mayhew all the way up to Jim Caldwell getting fired. That 9-7, all that is gone. This is a clean slate for Brad Holmes. Clean slate. All he have to do is fill in the blanks. He don't have to do anything, but just fill in the blanks. If he's a good scout, whatever, like he's, I don't know if his resume speaks for itself, of being for like finding talent, whatever in the later rounds, whatever, and all that, whatever. Just fill in the blanks. Just fill in the blanks. Get your safety, get your linebacker. Maybe not this year. You got to stack up everything. You did the best thing by solidifying your offensive line. That's a huge thing for the next 5 years. If everything goes well, that continuity breaks out, which I anticipate for that to happen. They don't have to worry about that offensive line for 5+ years. They don't have to worry about that. Because they signed Decker. That's Quinn doing. They signed Decker. They're going to re-sign Ragnow, right? You brought in, you signed Halapoulivaiti. He's going to be an excellent guard. regardless of people say he's whatever. He's going to be healthy for number one, and number two, he's going to be between two hogs. Regardless if he's playing left side or right side, it doesn't matter. If he's playing left side, he's going to be between Decker and Ragnow. He's going to be an absolute beast. If he's on the right side, he may not be an absolute beast, but he's going to be a step lower than an absolute beast. Because now you're going to go between a rookie and Ragnow. Right? So the offense, it just fill in the blanks, Brad Holmes. Fill in the blanks. Get your safety. You may need a linebacker. People talking about they need an edge rusher. All you just need to do is just be dominant. Just be dominant. Okay, let's say, for example, when you look at the top teams, right? The top dominant NFL teams. If I were to go with three, let's say if I were to go with the, what is that? The 86 or 87 Giants. If I were to go with the 85 Bears, and if I were to go with the 2000 Ravens, or even if I were to go with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with Warren Sapp and Derek Brooks, and who is their dominant edge rusher? If you're going to say Richard Dent was for the Chicago Bears, I was like, okay, all right. But his linebackers were just dogs because they had a bona fide leader. Every defense had a bona fide leader. And I'm not going to say Lawrence Taylor was like, how can I say it? He was like Randy Moss on that Minnesota team. He was like Randy Moss. You already had Robert Smith. You already had who was the other? You had Chris Carter, Jake Reed, and then you threw in Randy Moss, right? You already had that going. And you had Robert Smith at the backfield with whatever quarterback you wanted to run with that time. Randall Cunningham, if you had Dante Culpepper, if you had, I don't know if it was Gus Farad, but whoever quarterback you had, Lawrence Taylor was Randy Moss on the defensive side of the ball. Their defense was already stacked with Pepper Johnson, Banks, that linebacker core was already Carlson. I can't think of his name. I think it's Willie Carlson. Their defense was already just stacked. So, but Carlson, I think Willie Carlson was like the leader of the defense, as well as Michael Singletary was the leader of the Chicago Bears, and you built off of that, right? All you need is a leader, and your linebacker core, a leader. That's all you need. One guy. And so I don't know if they have that as of yet. I don't know if they have that. That guy that's going to just bring it like effort, like Ben Wallace effort. It's talent nonetheless, but it's just more so outworking the opponent. It will help if you had like a little special gift, a thing or two, but it's more so just outworking your. Those dominant defenses that we talk about, like, the great ones from the Warren Sapp Tampa Bay team, and talk about the Chicago Bears, 85, you're talking about the 80s Giants, or even if you were to talk about the Baltimore Ravens with Ray Lewis, look at the linebacker. Look at the linebacker. Not linebackers. With Ray Lewis, you was able to go in the draft and go after who? You able to go after Terrell Suggs, and you able to get Ed Reed, right? But of course, I think in that draft when they got Ray Lewis, I think they drafted Jamal Lewis. So they was running the ball. It wasn't really a passing team. They was running the ball, and they allowed. But Ray Lewis came into his own. Once he got cleared, he came into his own, and he became the leader. The Lions have never had a leader on the defensive side of the ball. Don't get me wrong. People want to say it was Chris Spillman, but he was an emotional guy. He was okay. But he's not. What I mean by no. He was a leader. Don't get me wrong. He wasn't a guy I couldn't build my defense on. Let me say it that way. Forgive me. I retract that statement. He was a leader. He just wasn't a guy I can build my defense on. All the Lions need is one guy to build a defense on. They when they got Frank Ragnow on the offensive side of the ball, they could build a whole offense around that, and that's what they did. You T.J. Hockenson and Sewell. You built off built off of Frank Ragnow. Not even do it on the defense side of the ball. But the general manager he's in a position now to just be able to see what he has. That's what this first year is all about. The first year is about his continuity as well as getting rid of the past. If anybody on this team that's not ready to go to the next step going forward, you get rid of it. This is where he really not shows me a thing. Year 2, he shows me something. Year 1 is evaluation. This whole year is evaluation, but it allows one group to come together. And if that one group comes together, it allows you to evaluate on a different level. Versus if one group is solidified, you don't have to evaluate that group anymore. If anything, you bring complementary pieces so you won't overwork them, right? But that will be the offensive line. So if the offensive line is solidified, now you can just evaluate everything else. Starting with my opinion, you could go at either secondary or you can go with the defensive line on the defense side of the ball. The linebackers is okay. I'm not saying the players okay. I'm saying is that you already know that you're missing pieces there in linebackers. But what's big about it is you can evaluate with a magnifying glass on 2 areas. Let's say for example, if they end up getting Richie Grant, right? Okay, all right. Well then, it changes everything with the secondary. That makes Okudah better at corner. Who did Okudah have to help him out in his? Who did he have? Even if they had Darius Slay here, no. Darius Slay needed Mathis, and it was a few other guys in the secondary that was here. Maybe it was Glover Quinn, and maybe it was a few others that was helping them slow down, right? Who did the Lions have? They didn't have no. That's where the inexperience of Matt Patricia got the best. That's where the Lions lost the most. He didn't know how to help his players. So they automatically going to be in the wrong position. So Okudah is going to fail. He's going to fail based upon inexperience of your head coach. And because if your head coach has experience, even if you lack in talent, you can substitute a lack of talent with experience. That's the New England way, the Bill Belichick way. Okay, all right, they get shorted receivers. So he put Troy Brown, I think he was your cornerback, and he put him at receiver. I mean, because you have experience. And with that experience, you're able to solidify other spots. I mean, other position groups. So now you can just plug in, or you can actually what I want to call it. I'm drawing a blank with the word. Well, anyway, with that being said, Lions fans, until we come back after the rounds 2 and 3, I salute.